Welcome to Scriptural Works, a podcast that engages Scripture in new and innovative ways to produce meaning for today's postmodern world. Co-host Greg Camp, Professor Emeritus, Pastor and Biblical Scholar, and Patrick Spencer, Biblical Scholar and Silicon Valley Tech Executive, employ various interpretive approaches to generate new meaning from ancient text, revealing timeless wisdom relevant for ministers, lay leaders, and interested readers of the Bible. Get more podcast articles and other useful resources at scripturalworks.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Scriptural Works podcast episode. I'm Patrick Spencer, one of your co-hosts. Greg, my co-host, is with me. Greg, good to see you.
Good afternoon, Patrick.
And we are joined, if you've been watching our podcast, which we hope you have been, you'll see a familiar face on the camera. Tom Phillips is joining us from Southern California. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Well, in the last podcast, we talked, the focus was technically the end of Acts, but I think we ended up talking about all of Acts and then some. But Tom, if you have not listened to that podcast, we'll include the link at the bottom of the episode today. You got to check it out. It's a fascinating conversation. Tom has written extensively and done extensive research on Luke Acts and specifically Acts, and published a number of books, and those are touched on in that podcast. So we strongly encourage you to take a listen or a watch, depending on which venue you're using to digest our podcast. So before we get started, I'll do a quick intro for Tom. So just as a reminder to our audience, he's Executive Director of the Digital Theological Library, focused on transforming theological education by creating an innovative co-owned digital library that allows seminaries worldwide to share resources, reduce costs, and democratize access to scholarly materials. And that is the focus of today's podcast. The last one was on actual biblical works. He's been doing some really bleeding edge work with the Digital Theological Library, and we thought that our audience would find it interesting to hear about it. And many of you may actually want to leverage. He has 5 different libraries built into it, and he'll be talking about those in detail. Tom has a PhD in Christian origins from Southern Methodist University. He studied under Joseph Tyson, extensive teaching experience at institutions. There's a long list here: Eastern Nazarene College, Fuller, Colorado Christian University, Point Loma Nazarene University, and most recently at Claremont School of Theology. He's written a number of books as well as refereed journal articles. Our audience is probably familiar with some of those, starting with Reading Issues of Wealth and Poverty in Luke Acts, Acts in Diverse Frames of Reference, and the monograph published back, I think it's in 2009, Paul's Letters and Acts, which the latter really, well, all of them tackle thorny issues, but the latter one tackles some thorny issues around persistent challenges regarding Paul's portrait and portrayal in Acts versus that in his letters. He's the lead translator for the Gospel of Luke in the Common English Bible, editor of major scholarly collections, contemporary studies and Acts. I have that. I have all of these. Acts and Ethics, co-editor of literary studies and Luke Acts essays in honor of his professor Joseph Tyson. Christian origins in Greco-Roman context was one of the most recent ones. He's a fellow of the prestigious Westar Institute and pioneer in applying modern literary theory to biblical interpretation through works like Acts within diverse frames of reference. So, Tom, our audience, I'm sure, as Greg and I are, really interested in what you're doing with the DTL. What, gave origins to it? What was the genesis of this whole project? You're at Claremont, you're teaching there. You decide, I want to do something different.
Well, I decided I wanted to do something different when I was at Point Loma Nazarene teaching mainly undergrads. Then I was at Claremont. I was dean of the library and professor of New Testament. And this was 2015, 10 years ago, that Claremont School of Theology was preparing to start what then was called a hybrid program. So they do 1 week on campus, the rest of the semester online. At that time, the Association for Theological Schools would not accredit fully online programs, so you had to do some of it residentially, at least each semester a residential portion. But we were migrating from a very traditional program. Everybody came on campus multiple times a week and took their classes, had to live in the area. And as we were doing that, At Claremont at the time, we had the philosophical commitment that graduate education requires library research. That you ask an original question, you answer that in dialogue with scholarship and primary resources as appropriate. If you're going to do that non-residentially, you have to have a really good digital library, and that gets really expensive really quickly. Uh, so I was doing what all good faculty members do. I was complaining to the CFO. Uh, and he just casually said, and the way the licenses work on all this digital content, it's licensed to an institution, Claremont School of Theology or uh, Fuller's Theological Seminary or Joe's Pretty Good Bible College, whatever. And when it is, then that institution cannot share it with another institution, resell it. The licenses are clearly can't do that. So that's what I was complaining about. And the CFO said, Game Kwan now works for the city of LA or county of LA. But Game said, well, what we need to do is to set up a 501c3, a nonprofit corporation, and have that co-owned by a number of seminaries so that we're not sharing it with multiple institutions, but multiple institutions own the library. There's a model just like this across from where Claremont School of Theology was at the time in the Claremont colleges. 7 colleges, I think now they have 8, who share one library, digital and print. And so it's like, there's our model. That's what we'll do. So I spent the next 6 months negotiating with vendors, set up the nonprofit corporation. That was in October 2005. That conversation happened. Then in January of 2016, excuse me, that was in October 2015, that conversation happened. And so then in January of 2016, I set up the nonprofit and started negotiating with vendors, telling them this new idea we had, that all these little seminaries just cannot afford to maintain a robust research library of religious studies. So let us come together. We'll take a bunch of non-customers or really small customers, turn them into one good customer. So that was the pitch I made to the vendors. It took a while for them to get on. We went live in July of 2016 with 2 seminaries. Today, there are just over 100 seminaries. We only work with small freestanding seminaries. That's our core membership. And we have created what is the world's largest research library online in religious studies because we have all these seminaries coming together to share one co-owned library. And most of our seminaries are quite small. But if you take the median, not the mean, not the average, but you go list them out and you look at sort of where it's about at 35 or 40 students. So very, very small seminaries, but together we've created something quite impressive.
So Tom, you've got around 100 or so. Are they all in the U.S. or are some of them international?
We operate because of licensing this stuff. One of our core values is consistent truth telling. So we always tell our vendors exactly what we're doing. We license it by the number of students and then license it to the Digital Theological Library, not to the individual schools. And so we have 2 libraries that are for schools in developed nations, U.S., Canada, Australia, Singapore, most of Europe. And in those libraries, we have about 100 schools, and that's where most of our revenue comes from. Just over 100 schools, I think 102, 103 now. And then we run a parallel project for schools in developing nations priced for them. And we have to have separate libraries because of the licensing restrictions. Then we run another library for religious professionals in North America. So if there's somebody who's a pastor or a counselor, or independent scholar who doesn't have access to a great library, he or she can, on a sort of Netflix model, $10 a month, have access to all of these books and journals we've licensed, and our seminaries are choosing these books and journals, this curated collection. Then we have one that's open access that we go and scour museums, scholarly societies, archives, repositories, publisher websites, anything that's university level reading in religious studies and related disciplines, and make that available free of charge to anyone. And what I would say on the open access library, anyone could use that and have an awareness of what scholarly discussion is today. They wouldn't have all of the texts that are being discussed. Those are licensed, you have to pay for them. But they could have an awareness of what was happening. And then for the schools in the developing nations, they can have access overnight to what's usually the best library in their country by joining, and it's priced for them intentionally. Our vendors have been very generous with us when we told them we wanted to do something just for schools in developing nations. Yeah.
So
What kind of
I
feedback?
follow up with that. Is
Oh,
that
great.
in those languages as well?
No, the content is primary because it has to be what the vendors see a market for and have created the
Okay.
content. So that's mainly English, German, Spanish, French,
Okay.
the European languages, and English. But these days, they can if there's somebody who speaks English or reads English, they can always download it, upload it to an AI, get a pretty good translation, and use that for classroom purposes. Yeah.
What kind of feedback have you gotten, Tom, from in these seminaries and their students who probably had relatively poor access to scholarly works, and suddenly it's like a 20-fold improvement in terms of what they can actually access. It's improving their education. You probably are fostering some instances where someone may have not had the resources to become more of an academic and work on graduate degrees or even doctoral degrees, whereas they can now. What have you heard from the trenches in terms of those who are using the tools?
Well, we hear back from our users all the time that it's a total game changer, both in the developing nations and the developed nations, and the scale of what's available. The average seminary accredited by the Association of Theological Schools, the main accreditor, has 40,000 books available, ebooks and journals, or ebooks and print books, about 40,000. The DTL has 1.5 million, so it's not 20-fold; it's more like 1,000-fold for many of them. And then 120 million articles in the collection. People often compare us to a database, and they don't realize we're a comprehensive research library. I mean, we have over 1,000 databases. So comparing us to this or that database is a complete misnomer. But we hear back all the time from our end users that it was a total game changer. Even schools that have PhD programs, we can be their only library, and that's sufficient for accreditation purposes. That we've had since we've started at 10 years. Of the schools that have left us, we had 7 that went out of business, 2 that we had to disinvite because they weren't playing by the rules. They were reselling the content. And then the other 3 schools that left all left over censorship issues. That we are a comprehensive research library that spans the entire field and all perspectives. We don't privilege any particular perspective. Our members are Christian, Jewish, and Muslim, and all kinds of Christian schools, Catholic schools, charismatic schools, Pentecostal schools, fundamentalist schools, Baptist schools, Lutheran schools, Wesleyan schools, Orthodox schools, and very liberal schools, very conservative schools. And the 3 that left wanted us to suppress certain content. They didn't want their readers reading things they disagreed with. And we just weren't going to do that. So, but if you take out those, we had 2 other schools that were having financial problems. They left, and within 2 weeks, they both came back. We made a mistake. We changed our mind. Let's come back.
We buy part of the cheapest model out there. Yeah.
So, I mean, we have that extraordinarily high level of satisfaction. In 10 years, for the most part, the schools that left, it was either ideological. They didn't want a research library, those 3, or they went out of business. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, with that kind of a challenge along some ideological lines, is the DTL itself, would you label it as a Christian organization, or do you just have a different notion of what that entails by offering a very wide selection? How do you kind of talk about yourself?
Oh, when we were founding quite intentionally to be non-confessional. We're not Christian, Jewish, Muslim. We're not even necessarily theistic or non-theistic. We intentionally said that what we do is study religion. Our mission is to help everybody to engage in self-critical reflection upon their own faith and humble dialogue with those of other traditions, whatever that tradition happens to be, whatever that faith happens to be. And we intentionally incorporated non-confessionally so that there would never be an orthodoxy imposed upon the library that somebody or another who wanted to engage in that self-critical reflection would somehow be precluded or have things that they couldn't engage, ideas they could not engage because of some confessional filter. Most of our employees, we have 10 employees, most of them have their own religious convictions and their own religious tradition they follow, but that's not related to their work at the library. We are entirely non-confessional by design, and our members all understand that. Uh, and because they're all over the place religiously, they wouldn't want us. There was there's no confession we could come up with that would work for everybody. So we simply serve all of the traditions. And there's no ideological reason why we couldn't serve the Eastern traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. It's just serendipity. We haven't had those schools reach out to us yet.
That's on the horizon. I was going to ask that question if those were on the horizon.
Yeah, that the kind of content we've curated would probably be of less interest. And there's the language issue because there's just not that much digital content available in Asian languages. Increasingly, there's some in Chinese and Korean, but that language, the content in Chinese and Korean that is available tends to be Christian content, not, say, Buddhist content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how do you build something this big? You have all these archives. How do you get it all into the database with 10 employees? And I suspect you didn't start with 10.
We did not. Most of it is licensed. So what we're doing, you go into our integrated library system, our ILS. We're trained librarians. We don't do this. We actually have 5 PhDs on staff and 7 people with an MLS. Some of those overlap. Masters of Library Science. So we have a lot of expertise. But there are ways you manage this. Most of the content, when you click on it, you authenticate, it's going to send you through to some third-party provider, say Oxford University Press or ProQuest or EBSCO or Bloomsbury or somebody. And once you've authenticated in our system, that's where you would actually download the content. That for things that cannot be licensed, there's no ebook available, then we do make that available as for course reserves consistent with copyright. But we don't house very much of it locally. The vast majority, it's sending you to somebody else that we've paid a user fee as an institution to get that access.
You mentioned you have boxes of content that come in from, I assume, libraries owned by pastors, libraries of seminaries, maybe ones that went out of business. How are you working with all of that material?
Well, our mission is to be one of our goals, I guess, not our mission. One of our goals is to be the library of record for religious studies, that if anybody has it, the DTL is probably going to have it. So there's a lot of older content there's not much of a market for. And so we've gone through, when a seminary decides to get out of what we call the dead tree business, the dead tree book business, and a lot of them do that, then we've gone in and picked up their entire library. We've picked up 17 theological libraries, left nothing behind but empty shelves.
Wow.
And then what we do is we digitize that stuff, when we're prioritizing journals. So if somebody wants a journal article, it's not available digitally. We have it digitized. We can edit down the PDF quickly and send it to them. It's sort of like interlibrary loan. And the same thing with multi-authored books, like festschrifts. So we have those, and we have all of that cataloged in our system at the chapter level, which takes a lot of personnel time too. But and for single author works, we can allow that for people who are in class as a class reserve to have access to the bulk of it, but not for individuals who are just like in the seminary bookshelf. But we can still provide them under fair use, a portion of it, but not the entire thing.
So what are you doing with all those dead trees when you have them digitized?
Well, we have significant storage. My estimate is that we have about 250 tons of content in storage, and we're constantly processing through. Yeah.
So when Patrick says he has a ton of books, he doesn't even come close to what you have.
It's a rounding error, yes.
So if somebody wants to join and utilize this fabulous resource, how do they do that? How does payment work? How do they sign up? Some of those.
It depends first on two factors: if it's an individual or an institution. If it's an institution, then it depends on where they're at. If they're in a developing nation or developed nation. And the reason we have to separate those out is our licensing agreements and different pricing structures. So say a seminary with 100 people, 100 students in Nigeria can have access to this world-class library, better than most seminaries have here in the U.S., for a couple $100 a year. If it is a large seminary in a developed nation, then the price is significantly more. For individuals, we have a separate library, but that's only for North America. And if they just go to thedtl.org, or they'll see all of our libraries listed, and the seminary bookshelf is for individuals. And then you go there and there's a sign up link. And if people want a free trial, they can go to seminarybookshelf.org. And there's a note there that says free trial for 7 days. But that's our license, any religious professional not associated with an academic institution. So if they're a professor, they can't join. We have professors all the time say, this is way better than our library. Can I pay $10 a month? No, you can't.
Talk to your institution.
Well, and the reason you can't is that our content providers want those sorts of people to have their institutions join institutionally.
Yeah. I was going to say, what about emeriti who you don't have an institution, sort of?
Yeah, if you're emeritus and you don't have access through your institution, you can join. Yeah.
Oh, darn. They give me access, so.
Yeah, that we have, it is a pretty amazing collection because we spend $50,000 to $100,000 every month buying new content. And that's all content chosen by our seminaries. So it's that level of instruction, that level of content.
So when they want to, say a new book comes out and they want their students to have access to it, they send the request to you and you consider it and approve it? Is that how it typically works?
It's all automated, so there's no approval process. That we get everything's requested. Yeah.
Interesting.
Do you have your own acquisitions people who are looking on their own?
We do. We tend to buy big packages. So some of the publishers, we buy everything they publish. And as soon as it's published, it's already fed into our library. And they tend to give you better deals like that than if you're buying it one at a time. And then as we become aware of something, particularly if it's in an area where we don't have particular strength yet, then we'll purchase it. But what we find is most of the things that our members want, we've already bought because we've been spending we have a much larger acquisition budget than any other seminary because we're working together.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've been doing this now for 10 years.
So if you're a minister or a lay leader, teacher, etc., and they want to subscribe, it sounds like the free trial offer for 7 days is a good place to start. Or if they want to skip that, they can go directly to the site and they can dive right in. And it's billed annually, I assume, Tom. It's not billed monthly.
It's billed monthly. We have an automated system that after the trial period, then it automatically charges your credit card, and they can cancel at any time. Yeah.
And then if they're a seminary or institution, then they reach out to you, and then you set up a payment process with them. They're not putting in their credit card, I assume, or is that how it works for them as well?
Yeah, that we have a onboarding process and a memorandum of understanding the leadership at the school signs. And then we add them to our acquisitions process, and we add them so their users can authenticate, get access. And anyone can go to the library and search to see what's there. They just wouldn't be able to download things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you have an onboarding training process for those institutions for their students? How's that work? Or is it so easy to use that's not really needed?
Well, what I would say is, did you have an onboarding process when you started shopping on Amazon? Probably not. It's if you can use Amazon, you can use this. And the other thing, a lot of our schools have a librarian, and we're not trying to put them out of business. So we don't do that classic reference information literacy stuff. That we allow the local librarian to do that.
Well, since it doesn't sound like you have enough time or money to buy up all the books in the world, that you're actually trying to produce books through the DTL press.
Yeah.
What is that, and how did that get started?
Well, what we wanted to do was to narrow the information gap between developed and developing nations, and to address the textbook affordability problem. So there are a lot of seminaries that have limited budgets. Maybe they're a part of the DTL, maybe they're not a part of the DTL. But we wanted to make it so that if you were doing introductory work in theological areas, biblical studies, church history, history of Christianity, history of Judaism, whatever, that we would create textbooks that we made open access. That is free. You could download the PDF free. And then if you wanted, you could also buy the print book on Amazon. So just this summer, we've started doing that. And we do 3 different kinds of books. We do traditionally authored books. So somebody has a book they've written from scratch, that then we'll publish that as long as we can make the PDF free. And it's interesting because libraries have been doing this for a while. If you give away the PDF, you'll sell more of the print copies. And the reason, it's counterintuitive, but the reason is simple. There are a lot of people start reading a PDF or start reading a stack of papers they printed out, and they just want a print book, particularly if they're inexpensive. And so as long as we can, and we pay royalties and have agreements like regular publishers, but we give away the print book, and then we immediately translate it using AI into French, Spanish, Creole, German, Portuguese, and then we're working to add Chinese and Korean to make it available, so that the vision is a young woman sitting in a coffee shop in Ecuador has access to the same quality of information as the person sitting in a major research university in the US or Europe. That's certainly not the case right now, but the technology is there. What we need is people to have the will. So we recruit established scholars and to write. So we do those books with traditional authorship. Then we also buy the rights to translate existing books, either from English into other languages or from other languages into English. Like we just did a theology of the Old Testament written by a prominent Latin American scholar. And then we do a third kind of book that are entirely AI generated. We take scholars who are established in their field, we train them on prompt engineering, we give them an account, and have them create introductory level textbooks on some topic. Gospel of Luke, the one we're working on right now is on the book of Ezekiel. And they take and create that using AI. Then we translate it by AI and also make it available open access and in print. And the technology is now good enough that you can create a really good introductory level textbook on virtually any topic a seminary would have in their curriculum. And what we would like to do is simply make the introductory textbook market dominated by free. And we think we can do this. We think we have the expertise. We have the systems in place. We're recruiting the people to work with us now. And to make it available in all these other languages because AI translations are that good now. But we call that Theological Essentials. We've been working on that project for the last few months.
Tom, you know that in California, at the collegiate level, particularly in the California community colleges, they've had a heavy push towards open access textbooks. And many of the local community colleges have Intro to the Bible or Intro to the New Testament, Intro to the Old Testament. Is the DTL Press trying to tap into that market, or is it at a level that you think is above an entry-level collegiate?
I've taught entry-level, 100-level college courses like Introduction to New Testament. I think I've taught 60 or 70 times. I've also taught that same course at the seminary level, and I've taught PhD students. So I've done the range. At the intro level, the textbooks aren't really that different. Like Bart Ehrman's Introduction to the New Testament or his name's slipping my mind, the Lutheran guy. It'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah, but they tend to be expensive and they change editions every few years.
And the only reason they change the editions is just so that you can't use used textbooks. So we haven't created an introduction to the New Testament or to the Old Testament yet, the Hebrew Bible yet. We will eventually, but what we're doing now is individual books, and like we have one on Synoptic Gospels. But what we want to do is to create enough, and our books are modeled, our theological essentials, on the Oxford Very Short Introductions, if you're familiar with that series. And then if you were teaching a class on the Synoptic Gospels, then we want to have one on the Synoptic Gospels, one on the sources of the Synoptics, one on redaction criticism, one on form criticism, one on each of the Gospels, maybe. And then you could pick and choose the pieces you want and put it together to create your own. That's the vision. Eventually, we might create those larger textbooks, but that's not our immediate short-term goal. We want lots of short books that people can use and maybe use 3 or 4 of them for different purposes in a course. And the translating into other languages is really important for us. And at the end of June, there were 2 really important cases that came through the federal courts. One of them against Anthropic and the other Meta, parent of Facebook. And in both cases, 2 separate cases, 2 different federal judges, both judges ruled that it is fair use, completely legal to train an AI on copyrighted material if you own the material. The Anthropic case, there's some questions about legal acquisition of the material. But if you've legally acquired the right to the material, that is, like us, own and scan the print book. So we're actually working on a project now to train AIs on all of our content. We have about 75,000 volumes scanned, including all the standard critical commentaries, all the major biblical studies journals where we focused first. I was in my office 6 or 8 months ago. A guy called me, get a lot of calls. And I thought he was a salesman. because he kept asking me all these questions about what we do and what we need, blah, blah, blah. So finally I said, help me out here. What are you selling? I'm not sure. Oh, no. I'm a billionaire. I'm not selling anything. I have more money than I can ever spend. Like, oh, now you got my attention. He said, I want to help you. And then he is a devout Christian. He said he wanted to spend his money to make Jesus happy. I said, I can do that. I can spend your money. Yes, trust me. And we'll just take it as an article of faith that makes Jesus happy. But so and he has a PhD in AI, several patents. And he has a team of engineers helping us work on this project. What we want to do is create a commentary on the fly. So you're curious, the kenosis hymn in Philippians 2, type in Philippians 2, 5 through 11, and see what comes up. And it will be we're working on two different projects. One would be an annotated bibliography. The other would be just a commentary. And we're committed to making both of these open access, free to anyone. That he and the DTL both share the commitment to help everyone to explore these religious questions. Yes, everyone, everywhere. And these days, as you know, with AI, the language barrier is not a barrier anymore.
So, Tom, you have about 8 or 9 books, I think, in the series right now. Is the thought process? Well, I have a couple of questions here. How many, say by the end of the year, do you anticipate having? I guess with AI, you can publish a lot if you have skilled prompt engineers who understand the subject matter and know how to write the prompts to generate the content. And then, you did a book on Luke, you did a book on Acts, which are both up on Amazon, to your point, and are available on the site, which we'll have linked at the bottom of the podcast. When will you go back and update those? In every 2-3 years, you'll go back and rerun the prompts and add new research, new articles, and content on that subject.
And when we did it, we did not yet feel comfortable uploading, even though we had all that content scanned, we didn't feel comfortable training on that. Now we do. Mm-hmm. To be clear, we license a lot of stuff, and the licenses all say you cannot use that stuff that's licensed. So we can only use the stuff we've been picking up from these libraries and scanned, or that we buy and scan. So the question of when we update will be, we haven't hit that yet. At some point we would, and then we'd indicate second edition or something like that. But we haven't hit that problem yet. That right now we're
brand new.
Yeah. Well, and you said 8 or 9. It's probably been a week or two since you looked at the website. We're published book number 11 in that series today, and we have 12 and 13 in production. The big variable is getting what our preface to every volume says is we're seeking to have works that are credible. That's why we have scholars doing the prompt engineering. If, my niece wanted to do this, she's a fine person, but sorry. That it has to be someone who is a recognized expert in the field, and then they work within their field. So credible. Then we want something stable. I mean, anyone can go into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and prompt, but unless they've been trained in prompt engineering, and we do that, we show them how to get the best results. And unless they have the expertise, what they get's not going to be credible. But then even if somebody goes in and creates something that's pretty good, if you're teaching, you need something that's stable so that you can talk about it, have everybody talking about common ideas, common expressions of those ideas. So we want credible, we want stable. That's why we're doing books. And we want things that are accessible. That's why we are translating them into all these languages. And then we want something that's affordable. We're giving away the PDFs. That if we created something, and this would be easy to do, that we were making lots of revenue off of, but we had now priced it out of reach of the vast majority of interested readers, we would have failed. We are a mission-driven nonprofit. And so everything we do, we ask, are we serving the global community? We talked the other day about my first book was on issues of wealth and poverty. And in early Christianity, particularly Luke Acts, some of those commitments that were formed in those years are reflected in the DTL today. That there's lots of scholarship available if you happen to be won the genetic lottery and you were born in a rich nation. However, if by happenstance you were born in a low-income nation, access to quality information is still, even in today's world, difficult to find.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're trying to address.
Well, how did you get interested in AI in the first place? So you had the call from the guy you talked about, but I suspect you were already dabbling in AI. And in our field, I'm in the technology space, so that's not true where I'm at. But there's not that many. They're keeping it at arm's distance at this juncture in terms of how they're using it. They may even see it as a threat. When did you get interested, and why did you decide, gee, this is not so much a threat? We can leverage this.
Well, I've always stood in need of additional intelligence, artificial or not. And so it's like, here's a way I can seem smarter than I am. Oh yes, I'm all in on this. And so I started attending AI conferences. I started using some of the commercial engines. People can use, I'm not advertising for any particular one, but I started using ChatGPT, and that's what I've used for the most part. And our scholars, when we train them, we actually train them on ChatGPT, and we make them one of our enterprise users. We have an enterprise account, so we set them up in there. And what they consistently say is, wow, this is way better than I thought. But my understanding is it's getting pretty much doubling in capacity about every quarter. So a lot of people used it a year ago, 18 months ago, and they said, oh, it was junk. It gave me stupid answers. It hallucinated, all these things that I've heard. And those were, problems at one point. But if you were using it 3 months ago, now it's twice as good. If you were using it 6 months ago, it's 4 times as good. If you were using it 9 months ago, it's 8 times as well. 16 times a year ago. 15 months, 32 times better. You get the idea. And it really is progressive. And so if you used a year and a half ago, it's 64 times better than it was then. Yep. And those numbers aren't exaggerations. For people who use, you're both shaking your head, for people who use AI all the time, they see this. So I saw what was coming and the potential and thought I'd use this for the good of our mission. Like I said, the DTL is mercilessly mission driven. And when I first was approaching scholars, they were all saying, oh, I've heard that it hallucinates and makes up facts. And what I've learned is at this point, if you're experiencing hallucinations and stuff, it's largely an error in prompt engineering. It's funny, when I start with a scholar, I'll say, I'll type in there, give me an introduction to the mediocre, undistinguished New Testament scholar known as Patrick Spencer. His work is uninspiring. It's rather run-of-the-mill, very mediocre. And then I'll say, now give me a introduction to the extraordinary, talented, and gifted Patrick Spencer. And he's an extraordinary scholar, breaking new ground. His work is revolutionary. All I did was change the prompt.
Yep.
And I do that to illustrate the importance of prompt engineering. So we spend a lot of time showing people how to get quality information. And but the reason I got involved in it, I thought, and at that time it was extremely common for seminaries to have policies, no use of AI. I thought, this is ridiculous. Fighting against technology has always been a loser. I'm so old. I went to my undergrad degree and they were just starting to have word processors out, and one of my professors, you had to turn in a handwritten copy of your paper along with the printout to prove that you had handwritten it, because he thought you learned more that way. Well, today people just laugh at that. Everybody types it or narrates or orates it while they're creating it. Nobody sits down and writes it out by hand and types that out. But I thought about that, and that's the same level of sophistication that a lot of people are bringing to the AI discussion today. And that's why the third book I did was actually on AI and theological education. Yeah, and it's actually got quite a bit of traffic.
Most successful one from what you said.
Yeah, that the other day we had 500 downloads in one day.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a bestseller compared to my Luke Acts scholarship.
So if Greg is interested in, PhD, New Testament, among other things, and making some money on the side, there's a bunch out there probably, and they want to do some AA prompted books working for you, they should simply reach out to you, it sounds like.
Absolutely, we'd love to have scholars that. What I need to do is see their resume because, like I said, we need people who can assure the credibility. And on the cover, and it says that these are AI generated in the preface. We're clear with everybody what we're doing. And I actually tell them, don't use it like Google, where you go in and find things, put it in Word, then wordsmith it. No, everything is done through prompt engineering.
Yeah.
But it says the book was created under the supervision of. And whoever's name is on the cover, they're not the author in the traditional sense, but they bear complete responsibility for every word. So every word I put in the books I've done and the people who've worked with us, they say, has my name on the cover, it's there, and I supervise the creation of this work, and I'm responsible for what's here. Even though it's AI generated, that they're bearing the responsibility and it's their name. For younger scholars, what I do is when you're building your resume, don't put this under scholarship. Put it under community service. I am so committed to global theological education that I'm willing to invest my time and energy in this, and look at all these languages this has been translated into. And for people looking for a job, often that is also a good thing.
Compelling.
It's great to have your scholarly publications and all that. There's no replacement for peer review and such. But also, when you're looking for a job, you can stand out as like, well, you got AI skills? That's pretty impressive. And you're committed to theological education beyond the classroom. These could actually be very marketable things for young scholars. Yeah, but what we do, we pay them by the hour, and then we pay them royalties if the book passes 50 actual print sales. Yeah. But we'd love to hear from scholars. And if they're a young scholar trying to find their voice in the community, they're trying to find, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a great way for building up your proofreading skills, because you still have to read what's going. Able to ask good questions, to be able to write these questions out and figure out why it's giving you the answers it's giving you. These are really transferable skills.
Yeah, you don't really have to proofread. What you have to do is read for content. Yeah. But, you're not going to have subject verb disagreement errors, that kind of thing that a traditional
content
copy editor. Yeah, you're not copy editing. But, and part of it is I've had people who've taught for 40 years who do this, and they say it's actually made them better at writing and at thinking through how do you ask the questions and how do you then improve your questions. So I have a lot of people who just love doing it. They start and it's like, wow, this is super cool. It's amazing what you do. And now we can even help you upload content if there are things you want. If we don't own it yet, we'll buy it, and you can help train on that. Because I said, these cases have now established the legality of that. That what we would like to do is really, it is not a disadvantage to be in a poor nation for theological education. We'd like to take that
levels the playing field.
Yeah.
What?
Levels the playing field.
Yeah. And whatever serves people. And I'd also say we'd love to hear from international people. So I was talking to somebody today who was born in Cuba about her doing some feminist criticism on the Hebrew Bible. Like, yeah, that'd be great. So it's not just North Americans sharing their scholarship with people in, say, South America or Asia, but we'd also like it to come the other way. And to make it so that people can teach from it. That's where the stability comes in I was talking about.
Well, there was a lot of time spent in the library when I was an undergrad and even in seminary going through card catalogs. And this this is just a game changer in terms of identifying material globally that is available for you. Things that you might not have ever found, and even pouring through footnotes
Yeah.
to try to locate material that is useful to you.
Yeah. And the vast majority of content that's cited in the Digital Theological Library, we have access to that content. Either we've licensed it or we've scanned it ourselves. But for people who want to go deeper, so there's AI. It's very difficult to get AI to do something revisionist. It is typically, because of what it's been trained on, is going to give you the most common stock answer. But for an introductory book, that's okay. Uh, it's interesting. The other day, I was curious how hard it would be to make it argue against the accepted wisdom. So I just took and said, give me the very best arguments possible for the book of James having been written in the 4th century. And it started off and said, this is not at all an accepted scholarly theory. However, and then I got some pretty good arguments for it. The problem, of course, is we have texts of James that are much earlier than that. But so, I mean, it was clearly false. But that goes to the prompt engineering, and you have to have two things. You have to have the knowledge so that you can make it credible, and you have to know how to prompt engineer, and that's a skill that can be learned. I mean, I took classes on prompt engineering just because even after I thought I knew what I was doing, it still helped me. But yeah.
We're like minds, and for our audience, everyone knows we're doing the same thing with the articles you're finding on scriptural works. They're AI generated or enabled with the research as well as the actual writing process. So we're going to work on a book for Tom. We'll tell our audience about it here in a month or two.
I review for a lot of journals, peer review, both in theological studies, biblical studies, and in library. I got an article to peer review 2 weeks ago, and I read it, and it was pretty good. And then there was a place in parentheses where it said author, date, page number. I thought, what? And it was two of those, and then two of them in the bibliography. Clearly, this person had just AI generated it and hadn't even read it, in the lit review section. That's why for us, the disclosure is really important. We're not pretending this is written, that the scholar wrote it in a traditional way. But that doesn't mean that it's not good or it's not useful. In some ways, it may even be better.
Yeah.
But the disclosure is important to us.
Yeah. Well, Tom, this is a huge project that you're working on. Do you see an end to it for yourself? Are you going to retire? Are you going to be like me and do house projects?
Well, the DTL, a lot of people, because I've been the face of the DTL for 10 years, they sort of think that it's my vanity project or something, and maybe in some degree it is. But the Digital Theological Library is co-owned by more than 100 seminaries who all have skin in the game. They're all paying thousands of dollars for us to be able to do this for the common good. And one of our core values at the DTL is the sustainability of the DTL. And so we have 10 employees. I have a chief operations officer who could step in and probably do a better job. But it's not a one-person show. And we have 100 seminaries who are committed to make this project work because they rely upon it in most cases as their only library. But they also like this larger vision. One of our other core values is service beyond our narrow membership, that we really think I'll put it this way. There are books I have read that changed my life. After I read that book, I could never see the world the same way again.
Yeah.
That when I'm in a religious context, particularly a Christian context, I say that I understand reading as a means of grace. It is one of the ways that human beings encounter the divine and are transformed in positive ways. When I'm in a secular context, I say the right to know and to understand is a human right. not a commodity to be bought and sold. And what we're trying to do is address the commodification of knowledge. And the technology is there today, and we have the skills. And we think in this area, in religious studies, it's particularly important as long as that is self-critical. That's where it starts, that we're not interested in producing more arrogant, self-appointed prophets. We want people who are self-critical and who live in humble dialogue with others. We think that actually makes the world a better place.
Yeah. We definitely concur with that. And that's part of our mission in many ways. We want to facilitate critical thinking in regards to issues related to Scripture from various vantage points, whether it's ministers, seminarians, lay leaders, lay teachers, or just people who are interested in knowing more about the Bible. Great conversation, Tom. We encourage our listeners, if you're, seminary, get in touch with Tom for more information. If you're a minister or a lay leader or lay teacher, get in touch with him. You need access to this library. It's not that expensive if you're an individual, as he discussed. It's a lot cheaper than buying probably just a handful of books for the year, and you'll have access to tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of volumes of content. Tom, for our audience, remind them once again how they can get in touch with you.
If they go to thedtl.org, they'll find all of our libraries and our press website. That's our corporate website. And there's a contact button. You can contact me directly. That I function as the DTL's secretary, so all the emails come to me. The other folks are too busy doing important stuff.
But we're going to have him back. There's many other topics we can cover with him, like the one we did a few weeks ago with him that was also included at the bottom of today's podcast. So, Tom, thanks so much for your time. Enjoyed it, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Great.
For other podcast episodes of Scriptural Works featuring co-hosts Greg Camp and Patrick Spencer, as well as a variety of different special guests, visit us at scripturalworks.com, YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. And don't forget to check out the growing repository of podcast companion articles found at scripturalworks.com. And finally, if you find our podcast episodes thought-provoking and helpful, make sure to share them on your social channels.